For those who watched my video from last week, I bought some 6 orchid seedlings, different varieties, and I had unboxed them, all in good nick. Kept them around for a couple of days just to see if there's any issues with them. If not, we would repot them. So here we are going to repot 6 of them. The first one being Cattleyas pink diamond and Chia Lin. We will start with that one and we'll keep all of these away. Cattleyas generally prefer a much coarser medium. The simplest way to do that is provide some polystyrene at the bottom. Simple, straightforward, keeps the water percolating, right? A small layer of the larger pieces of bark, charcoal is what I generally tend to use. Break up a couple of those to be smaller pieces. The bark, the mix that I use is essentially coarse bark, charcoal, and a little bit of perlite. So that's my mix which I use. Let's try to slowly take this out of the tiny pot that it's come in. Oh, that's glorious. Have a look at the root structure. Just goes to demonstrate these are the old roots where it would have been taken out of a flask and put in there. It comes off very quickly. Just pull it off. That root was good, but yeah, don't think it should be a problem. It'll live with it. Now what you might have noticed is I've picked up a squat pot, which is essentially a half pot rather than getting a specific squat pot. If you've got a specified pot you bought for the orchid, that's fine, but I tend to do it in a manner that there's not too much material available. Just lay it on its side just so that you don't break any of the roots to the extent possible. And yeah, just sprinkle the rest of the mix on top and on the side. Let's just try to get it around here. Now you'll see I'm not trying to force it to stand straight or whatever. It can just lie on its side. What you'll see with seedlings generally is they will very quickly send out their shoots, and it'll take in little or no time it will grow up. So that's pretty much it. That's the potting done for our Cattleyas pink diamond Chia Lin. So all in less than a couple of minutes, I would say. We go in for the next one now, which is another Cattleyas, and that is one of the larger pieces which we've got here. That's a Cattleyas trick or treat with a rincore, I think. It's Queen Ming Beauty, if I pronounce that right. And let's, again, using a squat pot, not a full-size pot. The reason I'm doing that is because it's a small seedling, doesn't need too much space. One of the tricks with bringing up seedlings is to not over pot them, because if you over pot them, there is a lot of material in there which doesn't breathe properly. Roots need oxygen to flow through or air to flow through, and if not, they end up dying. Now these roots here are not as good as the ones for the seedling we saw earlier. You can see a layer of moss that was on top, which would have meant that this particular one was actually receiving more water relative to the earlier seedling which we picked up. Just take this moss off to the extent possible. Again, you'll see some old roots. You can kind of feel it. Just take them off and we are good to repot again. Lie that on the side. Again, Cattleyas coarse mix, a bit of polystyrene at the bottom, larger pieces of the bark and or charcoal again at the bottom so that it allows the water to pass through properly. No stagnation, that's what we don't want. We can manage providing it more water by misting, but if it gets too much water, then it's pretty hard to manage. I can see one old root here. Snap this off. And this one, because the roots are a bit more pliable and the plant is a bit more mature as well, you can position it properly. And like before, just let's get the mixture on. Again, just repeating what the mix is. It's a combination of pine bark, charcoal, a little bit of coir as well in there, and perlite. And that's pot number 2. Again, it's a Cattleyas, so of course pieces of the bark on top first, so that way aids the water percolation. Slowly tease it out. Now the benefit of not watering it for the last few days is that it comes off pretty quickly. If you can see those old roots, they come off very neatly. They can go off. You don't need them anymore. It'll just add to the dyeing material in the mix. So we don't want that. I'm just using my fingers here. Don't need a scissor or anything because these are seedlings, not adult plants. Adult plants you might need a pair of shears or that sort. Again, position it nice. Again, this is another one where you can actually position it because the roots are a bit more pliable. So you could position it nice and neat in the middle. Slightly different to how you would pot up adult Cattleyas, in that you would keep a fair bit of space where the advancing shoot is. This is different because we will be repotting this soon enough. That's it. All my 3 Cattleyas are potted up, and we can now get on to the Oncidiums. Oncidiums a bit tricky, I found. Not the best with Oncidiums. I'm still trying out with Oncidiums. So I'm going to plant them in a slightly deeper pot. They generally tend to prefer growing mounted. That's what my experience has been. So I've got a small paludarium, and they love it in that paludarium, hanging from a piece of dried timber. We'll have a look at that in due course, but let's get started. So we're gonna repot this one here. That's Oncidium Shari Baby, Sweet Fragrance. As the name suggests, it is highly perfumed. This is a great way to plant it. And if you open it up ever so slightly, you can see how those roots are going through. Now, I haven't had a great success keeping any of my orchids in material like this. I generally prefer bark mixes, and yeah, each one to their own. Again, depends on your microclimate, how often you water, and so on and so forth. I tend to kind of overwater. As a result, I want a mix that will let the water percolate through faster than hold on to it. What you'll notice between the roots of an Oncidium versus a Cattleya is that the roots of an Oncidium are far more fragile. So you just need to be a bit more careful when you release them. And here we go. So what you see in this plantlet is that's probably what was in the flask when this particular seedling was deflasked, and it's had one good growth come through, and you'll see how it's extended out and then it's the next baby which is starting to grow, which is our target really. So again, a bit of polystyrene at the bottom. It also gives you some height for the pot, but at the same time it also lets the plant breathe. Got slightly finer bark here. That's because of the kind of roots. So if you match the roots to the bark, that's kind of what it looks like. Again, I would still put something right at the bottom, which is slightly bigger, just for giving it that additional bit of drainage. Place it in that material there, nice and easy, and a very fine layer at the top. What you will notice is not putting these seedlings right into the bottom. They're just on the surface, if you will, and when we water them, it'll be further back on the surface as the mix settles down. That's Oncidium seedling planted and ready to go. We can now repot our next Cymbidium. Now this one's an interesting one because it looks like it's got 2 shoots or 2 babies in there. So we'll see how to deal with that one as we open that. That's an Oncidium Hawaiian Sunset Auto Verde. That's the one which has a greenish yellowy color, unique one, which is why I bought it. This one's planted in sphagnum moss again, and it's got a layer of moss on top. Again, goes to the point that it's got more moisture, and as a result of which you can actually see that it's much more harder than how we were dealing with that Cattleyas. I like to take all of this out. It's purely a personal cultural preference, because I've had instances where I've kept them on, held on to more moisture, and has resulted in seedlings being set back. They didn't die on me because I didn't have to repot them and all of that, and they have survived, but it just sets them back a year or 2 easily. So yeah, as I mentioned, looks like there are 2 seedlings in here, so we can pot those 2 up separately. So let's deal with this one first. We will put that sphagnum moss aside, we don't need that. Same structure again. More of the polystyrene at the bottom. You can use polystyrene, big broken pieces of pots, ideally terracotta, anything that will let the water through. Larger pieces of the mix again, and because it's an Oncidium with very fine roots and also something that's much smaller than the Cattleyas, we will be using finer bark as well. So just sift it through and you should be able to get onto the finer versions. So that's how you'd plant it. Now, I know we had an extra one there. We could pot it into a separate pot, or we could just pot it into the same pot. So I'm just going to pot it into this one after I've finished handling that particular one on just this side of the pot. We'll separate them out into 2. So this is essentially, if you want to call it that, a community pot. That's generally a stage at which you would plant leaf blast plants. That's Oncidium 2 done. We're now left with our soft cane, then Okayama Gold Harmony. Now, I am so excited about this one because it's a golden yellow color. It is easily 3 to 4 years away. Now that's the kind of bark I'd love to see. It's nice and fine and will let water run through. That looks excellent. We'll use a similar square-ish pot for this as well. Polystyrene at the bottom, larger pieces of crop as the first layer. And again, pliable roots and a dead kiki that would have been the starting for this seedling, and some dead roots as well, so they can all go. And in you go. Being winter, most of these orchids are semi-dormant or dormant, so that kind of helps with the repot as well, and actually transport. Now you'll see it's kind of not very firm and just gonna shake a bit. That's okay. Give it one growing season and you'll see how that settles down and starts growing. So that's us really. We've got all the 6 seedlings that we purchased in reasonably sized pots, which is where they will stay for about a year to 2 years, depending on how fast or how slow they grow. And they will go into a greenhouse in the seedling area, where they will stay getting dappled light and temperatures which don't go below 10 degrees because I've got a heater in there. That's us, and we will see you again next week.